Hello, everybody. Welcome to CoinFund Q&A. Today we have David Siegel with us. David, thank you very much for joining us. David has been working on the Pillar project, which he's going to tell us about, and talking to me and our team at CoinFund about it over the course of the last couple of months. So we're excited to dig in a little bit and figure out what it's all about. David, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, Jake, thanks. I got the memo on the shirt. I missed the hat. I was going to make a tinfoil hat, but I didn't have time. I'm so sorry. Great to talk to you. I'm in Switzerland, in the middle of Switzerland. And do you want a little background, maybe, or?
Yeah, you have a very interesting, long-term history with the history of the internet. So it would be great to hear a little bit about that.
I'm prepared. So it only takes 20 years and 3 months to make an overnight sensation, and I'll do the 20 years in a few seconds. So I'm the world's first website designer. Somebody has to be, and so I wrote this, which some of your older listeners, viewers, YouTubers may know. This is Creating Killer Websites, version 1. This was the first book on web design, and then I wrote about 5 books, and this is the last. That was the first one. This is the last one. Is called Pull, and the first one sold the best, and the last one sold the worst. I like to think that this one is still the best book. I'm still really proud of this book.
You know that your first one was the first one because websites is spelled as 2 words. Websites.
I still do that. I must be a throwback. Yes,
Okay. I have to check on that.
It was hyphenated for a while. No, it's 1 word now. I've just refused to acknowledge. And Pull is really about data and how we can use data smarter in business. So it's really a business book meant for decision makers to make better decisions about how we use data. And it unfortunately didn't sell that well, but it got great reviews on Amazon, the people who did read it.
Awesome.
So fast forward now, this book was really about the personal data locker and how you can manage your own data. And it was kind of this nirvana depiction of a world where you manage your own data, and you get to be in control, so that it switches the whole world from a push model to a pull model, which we've seen happening in several industries already. And it's kind of, we're not halfway there, but we've started. And now, I've been on the boards and advisory boards of, I've seen more than 100 companies in this space come and go. Own your own data, data sovereignty, data democracy, and own your own ads, and monetize yourself, all that stuff. They've all come and gone. And the main reason is, I think, is a couple things. Security is a big issue for people, and trust. Right? And how are you going to put all of your assets in your own place? And isn't it better to put it in a bank? Well, I think now we have a better alternative, right? So the time is right. We also know that consumer resistance is a big deal, and I'm going to talk about that in a little while.
Cool. So tell us a little bit about what is Pillar Project? How did you come to blockchain in the first place, and where are you now with it?
I got sucked into the blockchain by reading the stupid consensus newsletter, which I could not stop poring over and obsessing over. And after not too many of them, I finally emailed Joe Lubin and said, okay, I have to do something with you guys. So we had a nice Zoom chat with a bunch of, this was 2 years ago. And they said, all right, get in here and, come into our Slack and start doing some things, and we'll see what goes on. And so I built decentralstation.com, which is kind of a demystifier for the blockchain, and a directory of what's going on, although it's a bit dated. I also wrote the DAO hack explainer to get journalists to understand in simple terms. So that's kind of what I do, make complex things simple. And then just over the last 6 months, we've seen these amazing funding events, and it's just an incredible time, Jake, to be doing open source software. I mean, in the history of open source software, there hasn't been a business model, and it's been a nice little side thing, except for a few major projects. But so now we've done some pretty big infrastructure projects, And now we're getting to the platforms. Yeah.
So a couple of things there. Why do you think that's actually a really interesting general point, right? Why do you think it's the best time to be doing open source software now? Is it because open source software is inevitable? Are we
only if people can pay. If people can pay their rent, right? I mean, this has been the trick. It's the best way to write software if there's a business model that makes it so that people can do it, right? So and Bitcoin kind of model? Yeah, Bitcoin. I mean, look at this, right? I mean, it's worked out great for everybody.
So, in the sense that you're looking at the Bitcoin project as a monetized open source project itself?
As an open source project with a viable funding model. Yeah, okay. And Ethereum has been fantastic. Look how much money the Ethereum Foundation has.
Cool. So, and so you were getting to now we are doing the platform. Who's we here?
Right. So, first of all, I started 2030 last fall with Stefan Karpiszek, whom you know, of course, and in fact, Vitor has joined us. So it's kind of rolling band of merry men and women who are aligned on the cause of 2030, which is to build a very open innovation platform for blockchain projects, kind of like Consensus, only with Consensus has elite world-class people and unlimited funds, and we have really enthusiastic people and no money. So we're just a community of people who want to change the world. We call 2030 because we want to build the products and services that will be mainstream in 2030. So we have 13 years to make that happen. We get people joining our Slack every day. So it's all volunteer. Everybody, I've got right now on this project, the Pillar project, we have two main projects. So the first one is the Token Factory, which is making index tokens for, like the S&P 500 of crypto, and that will be coming out later this year. So the index token, and then this Pillar project is taking up most of our energy, and it's an open source project to build a new platform for personal data. So just in the way I just said that we have this amazing funding model now. It's not for all open source projects, right? Because you need a viable token model. So it's not a panacea. But if you have a platform that really was difficult to fund before, and I've been trying to get the personal data locker funded for 20 years, now we're coming together to build this, what I would call, it's a wallet that evolves to replace iOS and Android, because it's like we get to reinvent the world from scratch now. Instead of traditionally, you have some small thing that hits, and then you keep bolting stuff onto the thing that has distribution already, right? So you carry a lot of legacy with you, right? And now I feel like we have a chance to reinvent the world, and you've seen several projects come out lately that are going to try that. The hedge fund world, right? Status always.
So David, let's dig into this a little bit. If someone goes to pillarproject.io, kind of your splash screen here says, the Pillar wallet is the next generation open source wallet will become the dashboard for your digital life, which sounds really, really familiar. Having worked on the Kin project, some similar terminology has been used. And so it's this idea that that every day we wake up and we use all of these digital applications. We use communication applications like IMs and email, LinkedIn and things like that. But now also the other aspect that's coming in is the ability to make payments, right? So payment, if you ever watch that, one of my favorite Andreas Antonopoulos talks, The Future of Bitcoin, right, where he basically said, sending someone a piece of value is a way of communicating with them. If you take babies and put them on a deserted island, they will very, very quickly invent a currency or some kind of way of communicating value to each other. Through trading of stickers and lollipops and all of that stuff. So in a context where our world is finally recognizing that in a digital way, right? How does Pillar fit in? What are the services and means of communication that you're trying to bring together in one place?
Okay, so there are two main things that we're going to get to build from scratch here without any legacy. One is no accounts. So we're going to get rid of accounts. So you'll just have your personal data locker on your phone. All the assets will be on the blockchain. You'll have your own private keys, and you will not log in, register, give your credit card or any of that. You'll just send the tokens that are good for services to wherever you want to go. So it could be a civic token to validate who you are, that you can use a system. And then you'll send the tokens native to that system, or maybe Pillar tokens to activate it and use it, right? So if you think about as you go through your day, you know, you're going to interact with a lot of tokens, we think, right? Over in a few years, right? And the last thing we need are a bunch of apps, because what are apps? They are little mini desktop apps, right? I mean, this whole thing is just a little miniature desktop, right? That we don't need. So they don't interact with each other. They're like little point solutions. So if you imagine just making a crosstown trip, you're going to use 7 or 8 apps. If you take a trip to another city, you're going to use 10 or 20 apps. And they don't really solve your problem, you know, which is I'm taking a trip. I'm going to a conference. I have to go see the doctor, right? I'm going to go see a lawyer. I'm going to go to school, right? So what we want, and this is what the book is about, is we want to replace apps with services so that you can aggregate them and do what you want. So it all just gets pulled to you. So if you want to buy a car today, Jake, you've got to go to 20 different websites and look in 20 different databases for the car. And you've done it yourself for looking for a trip. You got to retype your dates of your trip, right? For me, I have to do the birth dates of my children over and over and over on all these little, you know, resort sites. And then after the resort, after I've picked it, then I keep seeing the ads from the same place where I just bought the stuff, right? So instead, we'll change it from a push model to a pull model where it's just going to help you, and probably with a lot of chatbot AI voice, to say, you know, I think I'd like to go to Cancun in October. By the way, I hate Cancun, so give me a decent hotel room and try to keep me out of the way of the riffraff. All right, it's going to work on that, right? And that's the interface people want. This is what we know about managing personal data. We know this very well, that this is how much people want to manage their personal data. This is the graph right here. We know that about 2% of people want to manage their personal data, and after that, it drops off a cliff, right? People do not want to manage their own data. Microsoft and Google have both paid millions of dollars to find this out. They don't want to manage their own data. So they like the idea of data sovereignty and independence and all this stuff, but they're not going to do it. So it has to be magic. So you go to the hotel with your Pillar wallet, and see, there's all these tokens, right? There's tokens everywhere. So the Pillar token is a meta token. This is the third thing. Eliminate accounts, eliminate apps, turn apps into services, and the Pillar token is going to be your unit of count, so that you just go to the hotel and there's no front desk. It just tells you what room number. And then you go to the door and it says, oh, you're allowed to go in. Would you like to go in? And then your tradable API key, you know, gets you in. And if you want to sell your hotel room to somebody else, that's fine. Then that person has the API key, right? And goes in. But you can use pillars as your abstract layer, so you don't have to see any underlying token. So you can just go buy a cup of coffee, ride a bus, get on the subway, walk through the immigration and, you know, with your passport, and all of that can be essentially done with pillars in the Pillar wallet interface. So one cool thing is that businesses put a lot of money into apps and app interfaces. And if you've got a service like a broker does, or an insurance company, you pay literally hundreds of people to maintain all the different platform interfaces, right? You've got to maintain all the infrastructure for 7 different platforms and screens and all that stuff. And this can all just be turned into APIs, and the Pillar wallet will handle the consumer experience. So for example, you know, we're really going to focus on the consumer experience and getting the message out and getting adoption and build a community of open source programmers, because I can tell you, I've seen 100 programs or projects, many of them very well funded, build fantastic software, unbelievable software for identity, reputation, identity management, access to your doors and everything, and they don't go anywhere because it's too hard to sell. Adoption is a big deal. So we're going to focus on a lot on adoption. So you're able to write down 12 words and keep them safe. You can do that, right? This is well beyond most consumers, right? So,
yeah.
So it's our goal to figure out how consumers, to make it just magically easy for consumers.
Right. So I want to also dig into that, but before we go into the products, let's talk a little bit about. So this is a really interesting point, right? So like what you're saying all makes a ton of sense, but there's a wrench in this, right? Which is that, just take a look, for example, at the self-sovereign identity space in blockchain, right? So you have, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, whatever it is, project kind of doing something like very, very similar and saying that we're going to give you a really easy product. We're going to own your identity. You're going to own your data. It's going to be on Ethereum or wherever it is. Some projects have identity as a byproduct of what they're doing. You realize like, oh, I can't do my product if I don't have an identity. I'm not necessarily ready to integrate something third party yet. I'm going to build my own. So my question is to you, David, like, what do you think? Like, how does, let's say, the identity market evolve? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this, right? Because I'm asking this because the idea of this wallet, right, is very similar, first of all, to the idea of identity. And second of all, it has the same exact process by which it gets adopted. So if there's 5 identity options in the market, like who wins? What are the factors that determine like which product will be the most successful? And by the same token, pardon the pun, by which process is the Pillar wallet going to be the winner?
So it's trial and error, as we know, and there's a lot of luck and first mover advantage and winner take all aspects to these typically. And if you read the white paper, I say very clearly, we want any and all identity schemes to work inside. So identity is something you're going to plug into the Pillar wallet. We're above that, just the same way that the token is above all the other tokens. So if you have 2 identity schemes because you have a good reason for that, that's great. We want to take that, right? So we just want to be this kind of hub for all the APIs and keys and tokens. So we don't care. And maybe the UN will make their own Pillar wallet and use, their ID system and bake it in, and that's fine, right?
Okay. So, but again, like, so how this idea of adoption, right? How does in your mind, how does that happen, right? Is it because you guys are first to market and you managed to aggregate that network effect first? Is it something that you're going to do with partnerships or sales?
Right. Right. Okay. So there's 2 levels to what we're doing. And someone gave me a good comment the other day that I've mixed these 2 levels. So the first is the consumer view. Is we have like 4 audiences here: consumers, businesses, government, and investors. Mm-hmm. Right. And so for consumers, we're going to paint this picture that's in my book of how easy your day is going to be. Right. And the only way forward with that is with just making certain things the bar for easy and hassle-free has to be extremely high. So whatever next feature you launch on top of a crypto wallet, we'll launch with a core code of a multi-blockchain crypto wallet. Right. So similar to Jax or whatever, that's fine. But we're designed to hold your mortgage and your driver's license and your passport and everything else. So the first thing we do is we make sure that when people understand that when they put some functionality on our system, they do it with very high ease of use. And that's where we're going to spend a lot of time. So we'll have a big UX lab, and we'll be using voice, and we'll be trying and finding out what those simple use cases are that people will adopt and add those as they go. And then for businesses, and this is critical, we want to build a wallet that helps these companies. And I wrote this thing about in LinkedIn, you know, we can help companies eliminate accounts. In fact, we're already talking with the Swiss government about how, well, you can eliminate accounts. Well, that's amazing because accounts are a huge vulnerability, right? Holding all the assets and managing all the credit card information and logins is a huge liability. So we're going to give them a wallet that fits right into their API system and lets people have atomic ownership of their assets, but very familiarly use the Charles Schwab, the E-Trade, the Bank of America website, all that stuff. So these kind of white label OEM wallets that are open source will tie into all of these APIs and give companies a choice, right? You can trap and be very sticky like we've done in the old days and have, you know, all the vulnerabilities and bad press that goes with that, and but not to mention the legislation saying that you're going to have to give people data sovereignty. Or you can pretty easily bolt in. We're going to make it so that you can bolt our wallet in and the consumer can have his own assets and interact with your services as normal through APIs, not through your UX. Right? Now, is this going to work? No, in 90% of the cases, that's okay. There's a lot of projects out there that 10%, I'll take that, right? So we take more and more of these cases on where we can have a win and we can show that this works. Partnering from the beginning. Fidelity just, you know, did a deal with Coinbase, right, to be able to show their customers how, you know, the crypto world. And now we can do, I hope, a similar deal with Fidelity to get people to use an open source wallet that will show them all their assets. We'll see. If it's not Fidelity, it's another. It's trial and error, right? You just got to keep. We'll have several really good biz dev guys trying to get out and make deals. Eventually, we hope to make deals with the handset companies in China, in Korea, to power their phones, because I think this is designed with the end in mind that we will be the native operating system of the devices, or of your you know, Google Glass like thing. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty big.
Right. So let's talk about what you call atomic ownership in replacing accounts, right? So if a user cannot be trusted, if most users cannot be trusted to write down 12 words,
right,
as you put it, does that mean that you're providing kind of a centralized layer where you're doing that management on behalf of users?
I think we're going to give users a choice, right? Because some can. You know, I've worked a lot with Licka. I can't show you the Licka app because I'm not signed in, but the Licka wallet is an exchange that does just that, right? You're familiar with that. You own your assets here. You have your 12 words are the only place. They could not give your data to someone else if there was a gun pointed to their head. So that's ideal. How we get there. Some consumers will put in 12 words. Others will need maybe a piece of hardware, maybe a service. This is something that will be part of our ecosystem, that you'll have a choice of service providers, and they will be for profit, right? So it's meant to be a big platform that lots of for-profit stuff goes on top of. And our job is kind of to do that consumer research and find out what's the combination that they'll go for. Because convincing them that they should not have all their data on Facebook and drug companies and banks and phone companies, that does not do it, right? Ease of use and power does it. So you go to your doctor's office and every single prescription and everything all your records are in your hand. Now I can see that, right? How the user interface evolves will just be a matter of really doing research and trying things.
So is the scope of Pillar then to cover like all of those use cases? Like, you know, like for example, in our digital life, as you put it, right? You know, Google probably owns a huge swath of that life, right? You have your calendar, you have your email, you have video chat that we're on right now, right? Like a lot of the apps that you would want are covered there. Is this, like, what I guess what I'm asking is, like, is your project, as part of its scope, to build out you know, these kinds of digital services as well, and actually and really compete with companies like Google, who are putting out these kinds of apps?
Yeah, because we don't want to make tools. That's great. Tools are kind of all we have, right, at the moment. Little point solution. But when I make a doctor's appointment, you know, Google Calendar is only one tiny piece of it, right? And it's an extra piece. I have to keep duplicating all this stuff, right? So in fact, I honestly, and we may be investigating, seeding, looking for acquiring the company that does the voice. I think Siri, right, and Alexa are really the future, because you don't want to, people do not want to deal with all these, like, just make me an appointment and make it with these 10 other people. And if it has to change, let's figure out how the easy way to change it instead of the manual way to change it. Yeah. So we want to be the connector to all that, and we're open source. So any company can come build on that. Yeah, it's a big play. It's Status, by the way, you know, my God, they have maybe $200 million too much. But they want to be a platform, but the thing is, they're going to have apps, and I've written a whole book on why apps are a bad idea and why we want to just go to solutions. So it's going to suck, right, at the beginning, right? It's going to be very clunky, but we're going to set the bar very high. So what you can do with the system is it's just the easy button, right? And then we'll try to keep expanding that to more and more use cases that get easier and easier. It's gonna, you know, 10 years, you know, is my hope, is that in 10 years, this is on the handset. It's going to be a hell of a lot of work for 10 years.
So you're getting a lot of, like, gears in my mind turning regarding, like, apps versus services. But my question is, like, so what's the principal kind of argument against? I mean, you're kind of saying, like, first of all, apps are just these little silos, right? So
silos.
They're data silos. They are inconvenient. You have to have this app for New York and that app for Zurich, right?
Right.
But at the end of the day, you know, the service is going to be also a silo unless, you know, you get everybody to use a global, open, public database. Okay. You get to destroy that silo. But here's my point, David, right? Okay.
I think that's chapter 4 or maybe 5. I'm not sure.
Right, but here's my point. If you manage to do that, then whether you're using an API or a service or an app is really just the user interface to your global open data repository. So does it really matter what that user interface looks like?
Well, let's take this apart a little bit. Let's unpack this a little bit. So this all started in 1997 when I gave a talk at Stanford. You were, I think, in kindergarten. And at this talk, I talked about breaking the silos and just putting the data on the web. This later became the open web, and Tim Berners-Lee started jumping up and down about it. And open data just sort of got going from there. So I was in there talking about it, and it has evolved over time, of course, so that APIs do much of this work. And now we want to bring it to fruition in the following way. So let's talk about liquidity, right? Liquidity is a huge issue now that we can move money in exchange, right? So there is no exchange big enough in the world. There is no number one large enough exchange that is bigger than all the exchanges put together, or even all the other ones put together, right? So our goal with Pillar is, if you want to sell something, anything, and it could be a bicycle or it could be a Bitcoin, you put it into the order book, like what is it called? Open. I have a little list here. I have to Omega 1, right? It's kind of a, let's say it's decentralized or centralized, because I don't care about an order book if it is, and I don't believe in matching one-to-one orders. I believe you're going to pick away at orders, just the way we do on the stock exchanges today. So you put the order book out there, and then all exchanges can see the orders and can go for the orders. And your personal assistant will choose whether you want it fast and maybe expensive or slower and better deal. Your agent will figure out how you want it depending on what your needs are, and you'll have access to all bids from all exchanges. So not only do we solve the exchange danger part of concentrating risk, we solve the liquidity problem of not, what we have with the exchanges right now is like the biggest ones get bigger, right? Because that's where the liquidity is, right? But because they're bigger, they can have bigger spreads because everybody's there, right? So it's this kind of tragedy of the commons. And that's the point of Omega 1, and the point of what we want to do is you put your bid out to all API, to the data is just the ask is there, and anybody can hit it with a bid, and the other way around, right? So now it's worldwide liquidity, and this will come to all asset classes eventually if regulators don't take us back to 1934. This will come to private equity. This will come to all of this is what I call private or passive commerce. And this is another aspect, all things you own will have what I call a personal, what we call a digital birth certificate. So everything you own, your inventory of everything will be on the blockchain, it'll be under your control, and you can expose that to the open web. And if anybody wants anything you've got, they can send an offer. And I have a video about this on how your stuff is just passively sitting there, but that creates eBay without anybody listing anything. If you want to sell something, or if you want to do it with your resume and get a job, you just raise the bar of how much, or lower the bar, how much you want for it, and offers come in to you. It's a pull system. It's the same with your resume. Your resume can say, I'm not looking for a job. You can say, okay, maybe I might consider a job. Okay, boom, offers come in. So it's really turning around from going out and searching for things to maintaining your inventory of everything, right? Your family, your relationships, everything, and then letting offers come in. So I hope, and you can see that I'm answering your question about the open web through APIs and bids and asks, right? That everyone can see. So now you don't Poloniex, you don't get to compete on trapping people, and you get to compete on the service you offer, and all of that other overhead goes away, right? So that reduces, think how much friction that takes out of the economy.
Totally. I always think of it.
We're talking tens of trillions of dollars here.
In your exchange example, I always think of it as, why should there be, I don't know, whatever it is, 100 different pools of liquidity corresponding to each centralized exchange in the world?
Right.
Versus one giant decentralized pool of liquidity for all assets, right? And then centralized exchanges become basically user interfaces to the pool of liquidity in the back. And then they start to compete on user experience, right? Rather than, like just the security, the user experience of having your funds custodied and then returned to you and paid out correctly and accounted. That becomes the job of a decentralized mechanism or network, which is that pool. And then the job of giving you an interface to that pool of liquidity goes to these exchanges that are now competing on user experience. Who has the nicest looking UI, basically, that works the best?
Who needs that? But then now you've got 100 different UIs for 100 things. You want to rent a car, and you have a new UI for everything, right? Look, the car companies would love to trap your data and give you that UI. So that if you own a Porsche and a Mercedes, they want you to log in at Porsche.com and Mercedes-Benz.com and manage your travel data there, right? Let me just give you an alternative scenario. This is the user interface, and whatever car you get in, this powers it. Insurance, up-to-date driver's license for that country, all these tokens just fire off and say, okay, now you can drive. And every kilometer you drive, everything that happens, all gets stored here instead of at the beautiful user interface that Mercedes-Benz has hired Frog Design to put together to compete with, Lexus's user interface. They could just have APIs and compete on performance, on providing services, right? So, and gets to one more thing, Jake. These things are mini supercomputers, right? Moore's law is going to drive these things to be far more powerful, right? In the next 10 years, far more powerful and far cheaper, right? And we're still doing the desktop thing. So here's the thing. If this machine can recognize who I am, either through facial, eye recognition, a bracelet, a chip, anything, then it can recognize who you are. And so if you lose your phone, here, take mine, the phone will look at you and bang, it's your phone. You get into any car and bang, there's your car travel. You get into Uber and bang, your transportation, ecosystem comes to life. And by the way, you don't need these things. You can just, get on an airplane, flip down the seat. It sees you, bang, there's your environment, right? There's your world.
So in your example, your face is the key, and then the phone is the user interface.
Your whatever, I'm saying, it could be a chip. I actually would love to have a chip. Other people are saying, chip, no, I'll get kidnapped. Whatever, I'll get my hand cut off. Fine, whatever. It could be a bracelet. It could be your eyes. It could be your anything, your DNA. I don't care. I'm agnostic.
Right.
Right.
So, okay, so to summarize this whole discussion in a sentence, we're basically saying, apps are clever little ways of siloing data. And what we really want is a repository of data that's open, free, public, accessible, global, and not really controlled by any single central authority. And the blockchain model very clearly facilitates that, or the decentralization model very clearly facilitates that. That's where we're heading. Now let's talk about the token, since we're in the second half here. It's our favorite half.
What does the token do?
What does the token do?
Right.
And you mentioned as a meta token, it's used as a layer to sort of abstract away other liquidity transactions for other tokens. So let's dig into that a little bit.
Right, and I've got a big piece coming out, the title of which I'll tease. It's called Will the Last Venture Capitalist Please Close the Door on the Way Out? And in this, I've got a taxonomy of tokens and how different tokens will do different things. So this is a very active token that gives you access and does things for you. So I'll just give you a quick example. So, and again, you may interact with 20 different tokens. It'll buy those tokens on your behalf and use them for you, right? So pretty soon, we're going to have, we have Wi-Fi around. We're going to have wireless power within the next 10 years. So you'll go to the airport, you'll get some power, you'll get some Wi-Fi, you'll just pay that in pillar tokens. Why do you have to log into the airport website? You have to give your phone, you have to get an SMS, right? You'll just pay in pillars, right? And you'll get whatever, as you walk through your day, right? Whatever you need to do. So it's about doing things. It's about accomplishing things. The pillar token will do it. If it needs to acquire some tokens on the open market to do what you just, let's say you have an emergency and you need a helicopter flight out of the mountain or whatever, right? The pillar, the wallet will negotiate that for you, even though you've never logged in or don't even know which one. It'll just call and have an auction and choose the one, and then something will come and it will just pay it. It'll give the deposit. The other thing this thing will do is, if you have a lot of smart contracts that you're interacting, so realize we're working with the world of smart contracts and the world of all the server software that we know today, right? Both, right? Because the atomic ownership lets you just interact with data centers and servers. That's a transition. I don't see how the whole world is going to be smart contracts, right? It's going to be some balance, some mix. And you'll interact with smart contracts, and all your smart contracts and other agreements, when you rent a car, get a hotel, you have rights and obligations, right? And so you'll have deposits and maybe insurance and maybe credit, right? Do you really want to manage all those yourself by watching the contracts in your Mist wallet, right? Right? So Pillar's going to do that for you. It's going to say, hey, you've got some money coming off of your last contract that you rented as something or whatever, and you've got some, it tells you what, it handles your, for example, your cold storage and your petty cash. So it can start anticipating your cash needs and helping you manage all your assets, right? So nothing does this, right? So we're trying to skate to where the puck is going to be, assuming that a lot of these things are going to be in place. and we'll be agnostic on the horizontal level of what you plug in, and just try to create solutions for people that are just magically easy.
Mm-hmm. So,
and one important thing. Oh no, if you want to stay with the token, I'm happy to.
No, please finish your thought.
I hope we're gonna raise a reasonable amount of money. I'm not expecting, that we're just a bunch of volunteers working for free. So I have a bit of a track record, but really, we're not the big stars. We're kind of the underdogs. I hope we raise a reasonable amount of money, and I see our mission as creating the open source community. And if other companies don't donate their people, and other people don't jump on this to program it, why should we program it? So I think what our job is really to communicate, to work on understanding the customer, to have a lab that understands what customers will do next as we roll along, and to get over a lot of those UX, user experience, and confidence and brand hurdles, so that we establish ourselves as, really legitimate, and do a ton of partnerships so that the partners, we'll build a core system for sure. We're going to build a multi-blockchain wallet, a multi-token wallet, but I'm not going to hide. Look, I've seen so many of these things, and I can name 100 startups you haven't heard of because they got overfunded. They got a bunch of experts. The experts don't really play together very well. It's not really a team, but they build the world's best something. Up There. Have you ever heard of Up There? No, right? Huge funding from John Doerr and all these Silicon Valley guys. Fantastic software and hardware infrastructure for managing your own photos and for storing it, sort of a better Dropbox. You ever heard of it because they're not focusing on customer adoption. They're just doing all this awesome engineering, right? Too many projects fail because they're not putting the horse in front of the cart, which is making the sale.
I actually really agree with that, especially in this space, because what you see a lot of working with startups is that, and even just tech in general, right? Where very tech-oriented people tend to go tech first.
It's so cool.
If tech is your hammer, then everything is a tech nail. So
and it's so fun to be in the lab, to be building stuff.
Absolutely. And then what happens is that, in traditional tech world, a couple of guys get together. They're like, we're going to build the best, social media network that ever was. Right. And they take a year and a half to get it to market. And then occasionally one gets, hundreds of millions of users, and then peters out. And then in blockchain world, what happens is by the time you get to market with your tech product that you envisioned a year and a half ago, by the time you get into the market, you're basically obsolete.
How much pivoting is there? Oh, about 99%.
Right. So I think that's in summary, I think it's very smart, and I think anybody building in blockchain right now absolutely has to take the kind of market fit first approach rather than a tech first approach. There's certain things where you could go tech first, like infrastructure. Everybody's going to need storage. Everybody's going to need identity and blah. But when it comes to when you're talking about consumers, like you're saying, consumers are going to use this wallet. Consumers are going to use this identity.
Yeah.
Then I think that's really, really important. So do you guys consider yourselves basically like a foundation, like a nonprofit organization, or do you have a for-profit wing, or how does this going to work?
Okay, so one quick thing I want to add is prototyping. I have a webinar on prototyping. Don't build the stupid minimum viable product. Go sell it with nothing. Mock it up and sell it. Find out what people will pay for in the real world, even if there's nothing there. Then you build it, right? So prototyping is really big for us. Google uses it all the time. Burn some customers and learn, and then build into that signal, right? So we're going to do a lot of that, a lot of know the customer. As far as the stewardship of the token and the project, it's a open source project of 2030, which is a for-profit company, just like Google and Apple have open source projects. And eventually, as I say, you know, most of the work should be done by others, right? Because if the pull is there, if the desire is there, then they'll be happy to build it, because there'll be a model for them to make money using the token. The token provides a business model for anybody building on the platform. So once that gets going, we should have a consortium. And we are doing the token sale in 2 parts. So we're selling 70% now, and 15% is reserved for later, for more fuel later as we get bigger. Next funding round, could even be 2 funding rounds. So those tokens, I hope, will be given to a nonprofit, a consortium, and get, you know, more and more people involved. And that will do, then we'll have governance at that level. So the goal is to birth the project and get it up, get momentum, traction, and then try to form that group and you know, let the group decide. We're not going to have central decision making, right? Anybody who wants to provide not apps, services and solutions on our platform is welcome to. We'll let the market sort it out.
Mm-hmm. And tell us how you're thinking about fundraising. Now you have on your website, you have about I would say, what, 15-person, maybe even 18-person team or so?
So probably 20, 25 at this point.
Okay. So what are you fundraising for? What kind of runway are you looking for, and how many people are you incentivized?
Yeah, so what I've seen in all these token sales, and you've seen it too, is that people wait till the last minute, right? They put their money in at the end of the window for the discount, and then there's another discount window, and they wait again for the end, and just do it right at the last second. We've seen it over and over and over. So we've got 800 million tokens. We're going to sell 550 million of them. That's 70% in a 60-hour, mostly weekend, starting on Saturday morning and going till Monday evening, token sale, all at the same price. It'll be priced just before, just like the rest. There's no discount schedule. We're already about half full of our pre-sale. That's going really well. What I love about it is people are sending us 1 to 50 Ether to be part of it, which is great. And we're going to, we're hoping that the main sale goes really well. And then, and this is important, I want to invite everybody, it's just all about building community and doing things. And I tell all the consultants and people that we work with, this is just the beginning, right? There's a tremendous responsibility for an open source project that raises a bunch of money, right? You're not getting rich at all. We're not doing this to get rich. You know, you're not going to see me driving a Carrera after this, right? You're going to see us get set in London and build a community and start to get more and more people involved outside who want to be involved anyway and are not on our salary. So we're starting with an event in Slovakia. In the middle of Slovakia, there's a town called Poprad, which has a great resort, which is fun for kids. So it's a family week. It's July 29th to August 5th. And it's totally open. You don't have to be in our pre-sale or sale. Just come meet with us. I don't believe, and you probably are aware of this, I was a candidate to be the dean of Stanford Business School last year. And I wrote an essay about that saying, I'm not sure why you need a dean of a business school. So how about you hire me to come in and we just make that flat and let, you know, go to self-management. That obviously didn't fly. And in our case, you know, there's no point in interviewing people. It's rubbish. We don't look at resumes. We don't machine score resumes. We're not looking for keywords. We're looking for people who will volunteer and work with us. And I keep saying the people who will volunteer and work and build stuff with us are the ones we want to pay.
But isn't culture also like super important, especially when you're from an organization of, you know, a few people to then 25 to then 100? You know, isn't that kind of maybe? Well, I guess what I'm asking you is, like, shouldn't you be looking for keywords on resumes in some sense, because that will ensure that the people that you're working with, you know, are cohesive with you, like it's just it's a devil's advocate question, David, but like.
Yeah, absolutely not. So I hope that status does not go hire the world's best of class people in every area. That's not a team make. We hire for culture fit and enthusiasm. Adam Grant and some researchers of Stanford have shown that the startups that hire for culture fit and what they call culture gap, putting people in who have cultural skills and attitudes that you don't have to balance out the team. So we've got people in India, Brazil, and Nigeria. And are they the world's best? No, they're coming. They love this. They're doing it night and day. They're on Slack at 3 in the morning. They love this. You know, you can teach people new skills. And so what we're going to do, and we're very serious at 2030 about scaling, because we're going to use all of our stock to get money to scale to other. We're not here to get rich. We're here to build 2030. We're going to have blockchain innovation centers in major cities around the globe. And it's not you don't get stock. You get things that you don't get elsewhere. You get a great job. You work with great people. No asshole boss, because there's no bosses, and you get to change the world. This is why people want to get into Google. They're not going to get any stock at Google. You get paid well. You get taken care of. It's a family culture. You get to work with awesome people and change the world. That's our mission. It's really passion driven. It's purpose driven. No, we're not paying crazy amounts to fancy consultants or trying to get the best people. It's all about team. And whatever you do, it's your job to automate it so that you don't have to do it anymore. So we're building systems to scale. And that's why, and I want to remind everybody, and I'm going to write about what you should do after your crowd sale. I want everyone to read a book called Joy, Inc. by Richard Sheridan. Have you read it? You're smiling. It's an amazing, maybe it's the best management book I've ever read, and I've written 2. So Joy Inc. is about using a Kanban system to run the entire company, and the decisions, there's no project managers. The decisions get made in the room on the board every Monday morning in your planning session. And we're going to be practicing that in PopRad. We've got 2 people coming from that company to come practice with us every day. We're going to do a little Kanban session for 5 days in a row in Slovakia to get in rhythm together, working. I tell you, you work together, you work in pairs, you know, the skills are going to come. Whatever skills you need, you can bring them in. I want people to teach each other. I
would be very curious to follow your progress on that.
You're invited. You're invited. You're coming to Slovakia, dude.
All right. I've never been to Slovakia, but it sounds fun. So I have one more question for you, David, and then I'll ask you kind of what you want everybody who might be viewing this to know, and then we'll close it down. But so my last question is, you know, as this space matures, as the process of going from idea to white paper to token sale, you know, to product, as that process matures, it seems like the MVP is being pulled further and further ahead of the fundraising. In the US, that's for regulatory reasons. In general, that is for what they call, you know, responsible investment reasons, however you want to phrase that. But the end result is that a lot of companies now are feeling the pressure to put out a minimum viable product before they do a crowdfunding, so that the investors know what they're doing, right, and what they're doing. Yeah. Where do you stand on that spectrum today?
I'm writing a 4-part series on this called, you know, will last venture capitalists please close the door on the way out? They kind of has this seed and feed money. You know, Vitalik wrote about 2-3 weeks ago about funding models for token sales. So this is a rebuttal to that. Because everybody has this kind of linear thinking model that if you build your minimum viable product and then you can build on it and all that stuff, and still 95% of that goes away. Okay, so the VCs fund 100 projects and 10% of them, you know, work out, and then all the stuff they don't choose has about the same track record. There's no real difference there, and most of it goes away. 99% of everything pivots. Name a company, I'll tell you the pivot. Okay. So, except maybe, look at Ethereum. A year ago was, you know, where was it, right? It was in shatters, right? So you have to put yourself together. You have to pivot every week. And the investors don't get this. So my goal, and I'm going to write about this, is to solve that problem with a token. and with what I would call an index of startups, with massive diversification of startups, and let startups compete. And it's not the kind of linear seed and feed, but it's more of an explosion of experiments. That's what they are. And 2030 is the answer to that, because I don't believe venture capital is really going to survive that much longer. I think that having a whole bunch of companies that compete, and when 95% of it goes away, you throw away everything. You throw away the team, the IP, the working together, the brand, all that goes away. 2030 is meant to be a single company that will outperform any venture fund in the blockchain space, because we're going to do tons of failure, right? And when it fails, we're going to learn, and we're going to stay together, and we're going to throw a little more money at this and that. So as a single company, and I claim you could do this in AI, in Internet of Things, in other areas, a single company model is not so destructive, right? I have a bathroom wall covered with stock certificates, right? Including Pixar stock, which failed. You may not know this, Pixar failed, right? All my Pixar stocks is worthless. Then they had to recapitalize it, new stock, okay? Because it failed, right? So build that in.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. And I think, like, I actually find myself saying this all the time to sort of more traditionally minded, you know, investors or VCs or something that are asking us questions, which is that you cannot operate solely on analogies to traditional markets when you're in blockchain. You have those people who are like, I don't understand, how can this currency be going up so fast and so hard when a stock doesn't go up so fast and so hard, and a stock has fundamentals? You know, and like the answer is like, well, because you're operating in an analogy that only goes so far, and what underpins a cryptocurrency is very, very different, a very different structure that underpins a stock. And then in terms of like building up an early stage company or a VC investment, what underpins, you know, a company built around a decentralized network is very, very different than what underpins like a traditional tech startup.
I'm pretty sure that Theranos had fundamentals.
Right. Right. But anyway, so I appreciate that thought, David, from the standpoint that people don't put in enough thought about what blockchain companies can do differently, because they have certain advantages that traditional tech companies do not have, and that the traditional VC wisdom does not necessarily, as a blanket rule, apply to blockchain companies. In all circumstances and all issues. So thank you for that.
Can you tell that to the regulators too, please?
It's gonna be a tough one. But anyway, so is there, before it's the top of the hour, so before we say goodbye, is, you know, what should our viewers know? Like, what should they read? Where should they go?
Right. So we're building a family culture, and above all, and we keep talking about this in marketing, we're not going for investors who put in money. Honestly, we don't care about your money. If we don't make our minimum, we're still going to do this. Okay. We're determined. We want you, if you're passionate about this, to come join us somehow. We're the little guys. We're the underdog. We may or may not make a ton of money. It's okay. The time has come. It's 20 years and 3 months to make an overnight sensation. And if it takes another 5 years, whatever, we're here to do it. And we really welcome people to come. We don't look at your resume, so come to PopRad Slovakia if you want to be hired. Come, just join us and work with us. Be a volunteer. We all volunteer, and just add what you can, and we will love that.
Awesome. David, thank you very much for your time. It was one of the the more enjoyable, entertaining ones in recent memory. So I had a really good time. Thank you very much. And please come back in a few months and let us know what your progress has been.
We'll see you in Slovakia.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, David.